small people here, so we don't want to. We're going to get started. So welcome to the March 13th, 2018 school board meeting of the Shorewood School Board, or School District, sorry. First order of business is to adopt the agenda.
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Davis, can you remind us of our overarching result?
Yes, our overarching result is that our students are leaders who challenge themselves to grow and achieve academically, pursue their passions, navigate change, learn continuously, and contribute to the common good, which we'll hear about a little bit tonight.
Great. Thank you. All right, and awards and recognitions.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to give a huge thank you to everyone who planned, donated to, and participated in the Seed Foundation Swing with Shorewood event this past Saturday, especially the Swing Committee chaired by Sarah Lehman, who worked tirelessly to make sure that the event was a success. The money raised from this event greatly supports the district, and we are fortunate to have such an amazing community rallying around the education, the schools. So just thank you for everyone who came out and participated in that. Next, I want to congratulate SIS 8th grader Leo Newman, who was recently notified by the National Geographic Society that he was one of the semifinalists eligible to compete in the 2018 Wisconsin National Geographic State B. The contest will be held in Madison on Friday, April 6th, so we wish Leo the best of luck in that competition. Also like to recognize all the students and staff who contributed to the SIS musical performance Schoolhouse Rock Live this past weekend. The performances were beautifully executed, and the feedback from the show was great. I attended both nights, and they were pretty amazing. So the talent pipeline is very full yet for Shorewood, so no worries. I'd also like to acknowledge Atwater Teacher Advisor Amber Sarath and all of the Atwater Elementary School students who rallied together and raised $4,471.95 to help fight blood cancers during Pennies for Patients initiative. Students were presented the check to the representative of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and the amount raised was double anything that they had ever done before. So great work to the Atwater students, and congratulations. Next, want to congratulate SHS teacher Deb Schwinn and the SHS varsity mock trial team, who earned the title of the 2018 Wisconsin High School mock trial state champions this past weekend. Drum roll, yeah. They beat out DC Everest. In the round before that, just a side note, they beat Whitefish Bay. They beat DC Everest in the final in the championship round and are heading to the national competition in Reno, Nevada, which means we need to tighten up the field trip a little bit because it's in Reno. A lot of casinos in Reno. What an incredible accomplishment and great job to that team. So good luck at the national competition. That's a great honor. Athletically, just want to say congratulations to the SHS boys and girls teams, basketball teams who just finished up their seasons successfully. For the girls, Natalie Tomaszewski and Michaela McMurray were named Woodland All-Conference East first team, and Olivia Kesnick and Olivia Riley were named the honorable mention list. And those two Olivias will be back next year. And for the boys, DeAndre Anderson was made the Woodland All-Conference East first team, and Elijah Johnson made the honorable mention list. So again, congratulations to both teams, and congratulations specifically to those student athletes. And that concludes our awards and recognitions for tonight.
Great, thank you. So first up, as always, is we like to focus on student achievement and results, and to hear from our students about the great work they're doing that matches our results around the common good, academic mastery, citizenship, and character. And so I will turn it over to the Lake Bluff 6th grade teachers.
Okay, good evening. I'm Gail Yanish, and this is Paula Berman, and we are both of the 6th grade teachers at Lake Bluff. And when we started in August trying to think of an idea for an expedition, one of our science topics is on populations and ecosystems. So we're looking for a way to kind of connect it to the Shorewood community. And we kind of stumbled on a big interest in monarch butterflies. And the more we explored, the more we discovered that there's a lot of passion in our village of Shorewood over the monarch butterflies, and we've been named a way station and all kinds of things. So that kind of launched us on this expedition. So we worked on building background knowledge throughout the fall, And then the students will tell you a little bit more about how they built their project, but we ended with a wonderful presentation to the Senior Center at the end of January. And they produced these wonderful magazines that are just packed full of knowledge and puzzles and things like that. So they were going to pass those out to you now, so you'll have a chance to maybe kind of glance at those while the students are talking about their process. So we ended up having 8 different groups of students. So they each group produced their own magazine. And the students were experts on one of 6 different topics. Okay, so I will turn it over to them now.
Lake Bluff 6th Graders Monarch Project. We're 6th graders from Lake Bluff. My name is Maya, and I'm the expert on raising monarchs.
My name is Rose, and I am the expert on how humans can help.
I'm Bodie, and I am the expert on threats.
My name's Antoine, and I am the expert on population.
We're here to talk about our expedition. We did an expedition on monarch butterflies. What is an expedition? An expedition is when you study a topic on a deeper level. For example, in our expedition, we studied monarchs on a deeper level. In the beginning, we asked questions that we wanted to know the answers to. During the expedition, we tried to answer our questions. One of our classmates, Michael Manchester, described it as a colossal project that draws on multiple subjects, populations and ecosystems for science, nonfiction for reading and writing, etc. A topic that we study for a long period of time for a hands-on learning experience. This includes tons of revisions, peer edits, and collaborations to produce the best work we can. How we got involved with monarchs. Over the summer, our teacher, Mrs. Berman, met with Joanne Mackin and received some milkweed to begin our expedition. However, we didn't believe her because it went from a big, healthy milkweed stalk to a wimpy little stalk in a few days. It turned out we had a new class pet. We named our monarch Buttercup. She made her presence known. She turned from a tiny caterpillar, a quarter inch, to a full-grown butterfly in just over a week. We watched Buttercup endure several transformations. Caterpillar, chrysalis, butterfly. Witnessing this transformation caused questions to arise, both about ourselves and monarchs, so we wrote them down, creating a many-page doc. So we went to work learning about character and monarchs, and what better place to start than the Urban Ecology Center. But first, here's a video of the release of Buttercup, put together by Mr. Paterka and some of our classmates.
Monarch Kickoff. To kick off our monarch expedition in September, we went to the Urban Ecology Center. There we learned how to catch and tag monarchs, learned about the monarch life cycle, where they migrate to, and where to look for monarchs. How our expedition related to populations and ecosystems. In science class before our monarch expedition, we had a population and ecosystem unit. In this unit, we learned about things like reproductive potential and limiting factors. This helped us understand how the monarch population is declining and reacting to human impact. We analyzed monarchs' limiting factors and species as a whole. Later on, we divided into groups and all took topics to become experts on regarding monarchs. Next, we will show you our overall researching and magazine process, including note-taking, choosing topics, and forming magazine groups.
We started by taking notes. This included organizing notes by the main idea in detail. One of the first things we did was have a presentation from Judy Kessler. She is active in the Shorewood community and in love with monarchs. Her yard is a monarch way station. Then we practiced note-taking with Judy Kessler's presentation. She presented at our school and shared all of her knowledge about monarchs. After that, we picked the topic we were most interested in and became experts. For instance, my expert topic was threats to monarchs. I took in information from books, magazines, and trustworthy online websites. Then I shared it with my group mates who were also in the same topic because I wanted to combine all of our research so we would be prepared for our own threats article.
When each group became experts on their topics, one person from each topic was pulled out. Then one expert from 6 topics joined one big magazine group. There are 8 different magazine groups that then had one expert from population, habitats, migration, threats, raising monarchs, and human health. We brought all our research together and made our very first draft of our magazine. We soon started to perfect it by peer critiques, self-corrections, and even parent critiques. Our final product weren't just our magazines. We made posters, bookmarks, flyers, word searches, and welcome signs for the seniors. We celebrated by going to Shorewood Library and presenting to the senior citizens, parents, and community members. When a donation from the C Foundation, we were able to create amazing magazines that Clark Graphics printed for us. We gave out extra magazines and treats.
Connection to Shorewood. Some areas of Shorewood have become monarch way stations. Many Shorewood residents are also very interested in monarchs, and some even have butterfly gardens in their yards. Shorewood Public Library and the Senior Resource Center are also very involved in monarch projects. The Public Library and Senior Center even work to have Atwater Bluff become a monarch way station. Are there any questions about our expedition or our expert topics?
Well done, guys.
Thank you.
I have a question. What did you learn about yourself?
Okay, I guess we start with Bodhi then.
I learned that I learned to contribute with my group mates more and learn to do some things independent and some things with my group mates.
I actually learned to step back a little and let others help.
I learned not just more about monarchs and what they do to help us, but more about how they're endangered and how we can help them.
I learned that I work best when I am organized and yes.
Excellent.
Based on the work that you did, what other projects or questions were sparked in your mind that you might want to pursue next?
So, our grade is actually going to be working with the seniors later this year and creating monarch habitats. So we'll be doing that later this year, and that was kind of sparked by our expedition because we were all very interested in the monarchs.
Adding on to what Maya said, I think I'd be very interested in making my own monarch way station or some form of that because I realize that the monarchs really do need our help and many other species do too.
I just want to add on, but we're also going, I think it was somewhere, in planting milkweed for the monarchs. But then also adding on to Rose, I would also like to build a monarch way station somewhere, either at my house or somewhere else.
Well, for me, I think a big thing for me would be trying to plant more milkweed, not just in my backyard, but maybe just all around. So, better places for monarchs to grow.
So can I ask, because I saw it in the video when you released Buttercup, that area between the playground and the tennis courts, that looks like it's supposed to be perhaps a butterfly garden, but is that a place that could be adapted to be a monarch station? Because I think there's milkweed in there.
I think it
Do you
probably
know?
could, but a lot of kids will play in it and mess it up, and so I think that's part of why it hasn't become anything.
Okay. So we need some signs saying, hey, stay out, this is where the monarchs are gonna
If
come.
we could maybe make it a certified monarch way station, which just has a little bit more strict requirements, then maybe we could get a sign and people would realize that it's a monarch way station and not mess with it.
Oh, so if you were to do that, how do you think you'd go about that?
Well, there are certain requirements for making a monarch way station that can be found on monarchwatch.org. And so if we could get those, and then we could actually get a certificate, and you can also send in to get a sign to make it a certified monarch way station.
Great. Thank
That's
you.
very neat.
It's interesting because at our last meeting, we had third graders come and talk about their expedition, and they are working on the bioswale outside of the tennis courts, and I know a lot of their projects and the greenery that they're going to plant in that rain garden might have a lot of synergy with what you guys were working on. Had you talked to the third graders at all? I know some of you might have siblings in third grade.
Actually,
No, we have not talked, but I do have a sibling in third grade.
Were you comparing notes? Right.
We've not talked directly with
Yes,
You weren't
directly.
comparing expeditions
But
at all?
I have kind of gotten some information. But we could combine our maybe expeditions together and kind of make a whole big one, and they could use the rainwater to plant milkweed or other flowers that monarch butterflies need.
Help the
So we could
monarchs.
connect that with
I like that idea.
That's a great idea.
I also know a little bit more about it too. My sister, she's in third grade, and yeah, kind of what he was saying as well. They can help us out with the milkweed.
Yeah, so we could do how we have the reading buddies. We could do buddies, but for expeditions.
Oh. That is a great
I
idea.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you
All right,
guys. That was
congratulations.
fantastic.
Great
Good
job.
I don't know if
You
you
can
did
keep
that.
that.
Very cool.
Wait, where's the other one?
Oh, Beta has one.
No, but I had.
Oh, Susan, that vote. Yeah.
Okay. It always feels a little like, oh, everybody's leaving. All right, so up next, the first of 3 opportunities for public comment. I'll just point out that 2 things. One, the agenda gives you the approximate time of them, so we're expecting we'll have one now, one somewhere probably around 9:15, and another one around 10. They're meant to, we ask that people keep their comments to 5 minutes. You're welcome to, if you feel like you have things longer to send or say to us, you're welcome to email or call us with that. Yeah, or if you feel like you can't stay or you think of something tomorrow that you want to tell us. So go, Amy, did you say you wanted to have a comment? Okay, great.
Amy Miller, here as a Shorewood teacher and president of the Shorewood Education Association. I have a letter that I'd like read into the record. This is an open letter from Shorewood teachers. Our job is to educate students. They can learn and we can teach when everyone is cared for and safe. For over a year, we have actively opposed any and all attempts to introduce guns in any form into our schools. This week, we stand with Shorewood students who who are advocating for even more. The school shooting in Parkland, Florida on February 14th, 2018 has mobilized students here and across the United States. The Shorewood Education Association proudly supports our students' rights to take a public stand against school violence. We agree, enough is enough. We must work together to create change that can lead to a safer society. Shorewood's teachers want to thank our students for advocating for safe schools. Some of us will join you in your action on Wednesday. Most of us will do what we do every day. Create classroom environments where students share opinions, ask critical questions, and learn from each other. Our students are leading. We are eager to follow and find ways to work together to affect change. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to district operations, a report on the National School Walkout District Plan.
Yes, so tomorrow morning is the National School Walkout event. So that's scheduled to be 10 o'clock to 10:17 to represent the 17 people that lost their lives in Parkland, as Amy had mentioned a month ago, tomorrow. And so there's a national movement against started by the Parkland students, and so we've been working with our students as students and staff to be able, and parents to be able to get a plan on how to really structure the day, and so everybody's rights are respected, and that we're able to express ourselves appropriately. So just wanted to outline just a few things that we're using as far as guidelines moving forward to tomorrow. So we're using our excused absence protocol for students that are interested in participating. So at the high school and intermediate school, the event is planned to be out at the high school lawn. And so parents of those students that are interested in participating can call in the student and your student and excuse them just as you would for a doctor's excuse or something like that. We've been working closely with the students who are organizing that event to have it be as structured and organized on their end as possible and safe for students. I've also been working with the Shorewood Police Department to make sure that we have just an appropriate presence. So we have designated areas for both students who are advocating for their beliefs, along with any anti-protesters that may be within our student body, certainly any community members or outside community members that are in the area will not be allowed on school campus. The sidewalk is public domain, so they'd be allowed to be able to be on the sidewalk, but we'll have a careful eye, especially at the high school, in tomorrow during that time. So we'd anticipate probably 10 o'clock to about 10:17, 10:30-ish will be the event at the high school. For the elementary school, it's a little bit different, the dynamics, just because of the age of the students. So we're still following the protocol that we would normally have for students to be able to be excused. So students will be able to be checked out. They will need to be with an adult during that time if the students are participating in the walkout, and parents are welcome to join their students, to take their students then to either to the high school or to the front lawn to express their opinions. We're also committed and have worked with staff to make sure that we have students that either don't want to walk out. For students that don't want to walk out, that their class time will not be disrupted during this process, or will reduce as many disruptions as possible to make sure that we have that. So any teachers that are participating will have taken a half personal day and will not be in the building for that day. So substitutes will be all set for teaching the class the entire day. So our protocol has been communicated with each one of our staffs. I went in person to talk with each one of our staffs and to answer any questions. Our teachers have been very good and conscientious about it. We understand that, the First Amendment cuts on all ends of the spectrum of this type of event, and so we've got to respect everybody's opinions. And we're extra conscious of kind of what we're calling the re-engagement phase. So as students spend a half hour on the front lawn at the high school, it's going to be a pretty emotional time, and so we're going to have a re-engagement of students that participated and then students that did not participate back into the building and back into class, and made sure we've talked through thinking about how do we talk to students that, you know, how do students talk to each other in a respectful way to make sure that this is a learning exercise as we're moving forward. And so we'll have, at the elementary schools, we'll also have some police presence just to make sure that those students are taken care of also. The principals and counselors will be out and available, making sure that students are safe and that there's not any issues that come up. So that's the plan. And again, this isn't a school-sponsored event, but I'll also say that that you know, working with our staff and working with our students can be pretty inspirational. And if you have an opportunity to come to the high school tomorrow at 10, you're going to get a pretty good idea of that, I believe. So with that, we'll make sure that everybody's safe. And moving forward, there's also follow-up events that are planned in the city of Milwaukee on the 24th as part of the March for Our Lives. And if you have seen some of the postings in the last couple days, we have two students from Shorewood that are actually following up that event with a 4-day march that'll go from Madison to Janesville. So you can watch for your Twitter, social media, any social media feeds, and probably some press releases that are going out for Shorewood to lead nationally, actually, in this type of event. So we have two of our seniors are leading that charge. So again, with that, you know, I'm proud of the way that our staff has responded to that, and just working through some difficult situations, but we're, again, continue to be inspired and with our kids, and our job as educators is to support them, and we'll continue to do that. So, any questions on tomorrow's events? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yep. That's no problem. So,
thank you for working with the students and the staff to make this easy.
Sure.
Easier than other places have made it.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Okay, so next up is discussion of the district technology plan.
All right, so for that, I'm going to bring up, so Mickey Chavans is our district technology director. So Mickey started in the district in July. Has been hard at work and doing assessments of our technology, both in the district, and to be able to begin to cast a vision moving forward for us from a technology standpoint and how we support teachers in learning in our district. So Patrick Miller will also be up here along with Tim Joint. And so as you'll see in the description that we put together today, so there's multiple dimensions to our technology plan. So not only thinking about it from an instructional standpoint and how it enhances instruction, but also from a fiscal standpoint, because this is something that, because we haven't had a comprehensive strategy on technology and a vision to cast moving forward. So this isn't something that has been typically built, hardwired into our budgets. And so we've spent quite a bit of time being able to come up with what we think is a reasonable vision moving forward. Again, this is up for discussion, and we're certainly willing to take feedback on that, on the plan. But we wanted to make sure that we got it started now, so as we build in any money moving forward for next year and the years after that, that we're ready to go. So I'm going to have Mickey lead, and we'll certainly just have this be a dialogue as we move forward. So feel free to stop us at any point. So with that, Mickey.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Brian. So, as Brian said, this is our discussion to move forward with our draft here that we wanted to lay the foundation of where we think we should be going and heading, and how we can use technology to help students access more information, put it all together. So with that said, one of the first things we wanted to make sure we did was align it to the student results policies that we have. And so when you start looking at that, academic mastery obviously is just right in the forefront. Most important, give them more access to information within the classroom, or the areas, so it's instant access. They can then take that, turn around, and produce some sort of high quality work with that information they have, working with the teachers to manage that information, so it really shows off what they've learned throughout this process. Falls right in line with authentic learning. So I went out there to find out, okay, what did students really think about this? I sat down with some students. I wanted 3 students to talk to me, and I had a lineup out the door. It was fantastic, and so I thought, let's put them together and let them hear what they have to say. So what I loved about those kids is that they nailed every single one of the points that we wanted to do, and I didn't ask them to do anything. I just asked them to tell me about why they felt technology was needed in the classroom. So access to information, enhancement, creating high quality products. They just went right through it on their own. It was phenomenal to see, and kind of give you that goosebump moment to see that with our kids. There we go. Oops. So that's just phase 1 of that. I should say, I shouldn't say phase 1, but the R2. R3, the digital citizenship, is something that's really important in today's world as well. When we started talking about the online bullying aspect, what we're doing to address those issues. The screen time, I know that's a hot topic for a lot of people. It's important to understand that we're not sitting on devices all day long. We are putting devices away. They're appropriate for some times, but they're also not appropriate for other things, that we need to put those away and move on with, I guess you could say, traditional type of dialogue that we should have in the classroom. And then finally, with the digital citizenship, it's really being a part of that global community. What are you publishing out there? We saw that Monarch presentation a little bit ago. phenomenal, right? And where they put it, they went on YouTube. They have their own channel out there. They can bring followers. They can show off what Shorewood is doing. It's just, it's awesome. It's really great. So the question becomes, how are we going to do it? How can we get there? And it's a phased-in approach, right? So we don't want to do everything at once. We bring in a pilot group. That pilot group of teachers are the people that will go through the initial professional development on this. The teachers are the ones that will have the input on best classroom practices that they've discovered. The teachers will give us their input on best management that they found in the classroom for the students that we have here. The teachers will be the ones that create the guide going forward for the professional development for all staff, and that will continue to be an ongoing professional development type program. Initially, I'll be working with Tim and Nate Schultz on how to do some basic professional development, and then totally relying on the teachers to start to build that professional development, those best practices in there. Because we know what works in one district may not work here in Shorewood. We have to know the community, we have to know the culture, and the teachers are the ones that are on the forefront of that. When we go through this, the phase-in period, we're looking at about 4 different classrooms. We'll phase in this pilot group. The teachers will come through there. They'll become part of the tech team. They'll be helping the go-to people if there are questions around there. We'll be looking at them to help develop the classroom expectations. We talk about apples up or iPads face down. So we know there's some management lessons that we can share with everybody, especially with the students. It goes back to screen time also. With what students' expectations are. And it's also important to bring in the parents, bring in the community, so they are on board with all of this as well. So the parents, if there are questions on this, how are we monitoring things? Are we on devices all the time? Do we have to worry about screen time? We can really address that, because we know that the devices, when they're being used here at school, should be used for educational purposes. And if they want to play video games and stuff, that's fantastic, but go home and do that. And then we come here, we give you the the tablet or a computer. That is for work time. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yep.
So, and I just want to emphasize kind of the accessibility standpoint on this, and we're really trying to emphasize that that students would have a device when they need it, the appropriate device when they need it. So not necessarily locking into a Chromebook or an iPad or a Surface or whatever it is being able to provide options for students and to make sure that those are accessible. So what that looks like, again, as Mickey had said, is going to be developed as we would go, and that this is a plan, again, at the beginning of it, to be able to start with a pilot. If we get into the pilot and we feel like we need another year of a pilot, then we would take another year of the pilot. So we'll go as fast or as slow as we need to as we move forward. But this would be a progression that certainly would not be any faster than the progression that we would go. But I just want to make sure that we're clear on kind of the speed of this will depend on the areas on the right and how well we're able to develop those as we would go. Mm-hmm. Is there any questions on that?
I really appreciated hearing the students' voices. That was really helpful, and now you've alluded to the importance of getting the teachers to kind of take the lead and direction and things. I guess just to get right to it, have teachers been part of this discussion in an active way, with the work group, namely, and if not, are there ways that you foresee we could bring them in and garner their expertise, because in order for this to fly, we're going to need their buy-in, otherwise things will collect dust?
Absolutely. So up to this point, there has been a whole lot of teacher input sitting around forming that technology team. Not yet, so that is coming. The reason for that was, if you look at the technology plan, you can see the first basically 15 pages of it is infrastructure, 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 every device we can think of, Chromebooks, MacBooks, iPads. And then at that point, it starts really addressing, bringing the teachers, sitting down, creating that technology team, and getting their input on how we should move forward with this. I have talked to a lot of teachers, and a lot have approached me that the foundation of an awesome core is there, and it's going to be really exciting when we sit down with them and really start pushing to the next level. Okay.
first of all, just for putting our student results up there first and so forth. I appreciate that. That was going to be my first question. So that was great. I think the one thing I want to understand just a little bit more, though, is how are we sort of making sure that technology is sort of appropriately sort of reflected across the curriculum. And what I mean by that is I understand when we talk about technology, it's in one aspect of it is it's a facilities discussion, right? It's getting Wi-Fi where it needs to be. It's providing services where they need to be. It's getting, devices to kids and providing access. But then there's on the other hand, there is another aspect where we're trying to actually teach our kids how to appropriately use it. But I think there's a sort of the third piece where really, and this is how this is going to sort of develop in the discussions with the teachers, is how do we sort of appropriately use it as a tool, in the actual delivery of our curriculum, as it exists.
So, Rodney, I honestly, having some experience in there, it takes time, right? And so if our expectation is that we go from 0 to 60 in 1 year, it's going to fall apart. And so we have to allow our teachers and our staff the time to do it in small increments. The one really important piece that, Mickey and I really agree on is if you have a very good teaching strategy that really helps kids learn, don't give that up, right? Just because you now have a device, right? So it's okay to say apples up and not use a device if you have a great teaching strategy. But if there's a way to enhance it with a piece of technology, like let's dive in and discover that, but let's not change everything overnight and say, well, now you have devices, so everything has to change. That's where you develop chaos. So you have to allow for people to learn about the devices, how to use devices, and then just try some things without it being overwhelming. Again, not saying everything has to change immediately, but how can we help you dabble a little bit, make it a little bit better, enhance, and make that a multi-year plan, not overnight.
Yeah, but do you see that sort of developing as this almost as a sort of individual teachers sort of deciding in their specific areas, how they're going to make use of the tools? Or is it a little, the other side of that is, yes, we want to put some sort of maybe, I wouldn't say limits, maybe a little strong, but, guidelines. Good word. Thanks, Jeremy.
So, I guess when you start talking about that, the first thing that pops in my head is I give a teacher a device, right? And they have a whole classroom full of devices. What do? You panic, right? At that point, where do I go? So when I've done a rollout, or when I've done like with tablets, you start off with just a group. You start off with 5 things, maybe 3. And you focus on that one thing, or those 3 apps that you may have, and how can that app be used? And maybe it's one. I think a great example, if I can use your example, maybe, was Amy Miller in her classroom. I gave her a set of iPads, and I did say that. Don't try and do too much. I want her to do more now, because she's doing some amazing things where we sat down, we talked about one app, I showed her a couple others, said I'm comfortable with this one, and correct me if I mess up anything, Amy. And now she's using one app with her math class that's providing feedback, allowing her to change her instruction according to how her students are achieving, and move on faster or slower, all because of just focusing in one area. And when Amy's ready, I know she's going to go, okay, let's go to the next part and see what we can do there.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think the concern, of course, and I think it sounds like we're well past that. It's just, let's not use the technology just because we can, or just because, we shouldn't be worried that our kids are going to be skilled enough to use it at this point. And we're not teaching computer skills, and that, like maybe was useful years ago. But just make sure that it's not for its own sake.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I heard you saying is, we need to figure out how to incorporate it in sort of a complementary way where we're making use of it to enhance the experience.
Absolutely.
Not to substitute for, not to replace. And I think we might also need to think, I would challenge us to think also a little bit about, whether or not it changes the activity, doing it with the technology, sometimes in a negative way. And I can't remember, it's been one of the student linkages we did at the high school. I can't remember who I did it with. It might have been with you, Hillary. I remember a couple years ago. It's been almost a couple years ago, and I remember talking to students about technology and so forth, and I remember being a little surprised that these are some of our high school students that they seemed to believe that if something was coming to them on the computer or if it was electronic, it actually carried less weight with them oftentimes. They thought about it differently. It's sort of like, you getting the electronic survey versus, someone physically, engaging with you. And I think we need to be cognizant as well, just how, the effect it has on the sort of impact of, the message that we're delivering, the instruction that we're delivering, based on the medium that we use.
And Rodney, I think what you said was really important is it shouldn't be used to replace. And the one thing a teacher can do that no piece of technology will ever be able to do is build a really strong relationship with our kids. So as you look at producing higher quality work, that first sub point is technology can, and this seems somewhat counterproductive, but it can promote peer collaboration and better facilitate small group and individual instruction for teachers. In other words, if we can remove the ability for you to have to stand in front of a class and for 15 minutes disseminate information, we've just added 15 minutes where you can get with small groups and meet with individual students and build strong relationships, which is the one thing teachers can do that no piece of technology ever will, right? And so it's really important that we make sure that technology is not replacing, because the most important people that we have in that room are our teachers, who are going to do the good work of making sure that they know where our students are at.
That sounds good. Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
So can I ask a follow-up about the accessibility question? So when you say accessibility, are you meaning that you want the ability for, at the same time, every student to be on a piece of technology? I mean, what do you mean by accessibility?
So I characterize it as you have the device, you have a device that's appropriate for your needs when you need it, right? And so the chance
you don't have to go on a waiting list.
right, that I wouldn't have to reserve a cart of laptops in April to do that in February, because I know otherwise they're going to be checked out. That it would be somewhat fluid. So so again, if that's the case, part of what we're building now is to be able to work through the pilots and what number. We've got an idea of how many devices that would be, but what's the do you have like one card for every 2 rooms, or what would be the appropriate ratio? And part of that's going to evolve then as our lessons evolve, right? So how often teachers are using it is going to depend on the need for that accessibility. Is that fair?
Took the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
So, and Brian just alluded to this as well, that you may need a cart of a laptop, or you may need to write a paper and use something like a Chromebook. Maybe we're doing something outside. We need to take some pictures or videos, and a tablet's a more appropriate device. Multiple devices are needed for multiple reasons. I go back to my son, created a project for school that he did everything on the iPad, but had to use a MacBook to finish the project. So it's not a one-device solution. I know you hear a lot of that in some school districts. We got one device. I don't think that's the right way to go, because it's not a solution for everybody for every means. So the plan does incorporate several different devices. The tablets, they're great. You can do a whole lot of stuff on the tablets. You can write on the tablets. You got the note-taking. You have the sketchnoting, which I love. People learn by pictures. Annotation on there. The creation piece can be done on the tablet, so it's fantastic. It's very easy to, if a device is lost, how we can shut it down and make it beep, and we can track it very quickly that way. Overall management of the devices are simple. It really makes the IT department's job a lot easier and smoother, especially when we're looking at throwing in a whole lot of devices and just keeping myself, James, and Jack together. So it's a great tool to use. But in the same token, we do need those laptops. We do need a creation space that kids can go to, and they can grab a laptop and they can just sit down and do that finishing product on there. They still need to write papers, and while I can type well and fast on my tablet. I know that a lot of people type just as fast or faster using a keyboard. So we talk about labs, laptops, tablets. We will also have some keyboards available to check out that can plug into tablets. So should a laptop not be there, we still have other options available. So we really try to cover it all out there. But it's really, like I said, different tools for different reasons. And all these tools help prepare our students for the future. So the one part that really catches people's attention then is, well, what's it going to cost? So I've sat down with Pat, and we've gone through this multiple times, how this is a feasible plan. The one thing I will say that our technology department, we've done a lot more in-house, and saving some money that way, that we are able to put it towards some other devices, updating our laptop carts or our labs, and potentially buying some more tablets. Anything
You
you
want
want?
to talk just a little bit about the financial end of this and what that schedule would look like?
There is obviously a financial component to putting a technology plan together and sustaining a technology plan. And so what Mickey and I have done is looked at what you have in front of you is a financial support of the proposed technology plan. Currently, again, as Mickey had alluded to, he and Jack and James have found some efficiencies within their department where they've been able to cut costs, which has allowed us to have some of the budgeted money for the 17-18 school year that is going to be left over that we can use to support, begin to support the technology plan going forward. In the business office, what they call that is a pre-purchase or prepayment of a future expense. So I can purchase some things for the 18-19 school year in the 17-18 school year. And it just goes on our books as an asset. So in the sheet that you have in front of you, you don't see the 17-18 up on the board, but what I'm showing you is in 17-18, what our plan is to try to carry over $63,000 of the existing technology budget for 18-19.
And again, that's possible because of the cost savings that Mickey and his staff has been able to do of things that we previously had serviced out through vendors, and now are able through Mickey and his group are being able to take care of those issues. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the other thing I want to be able to do quick, if you could just walk us through kind of column by column up here, just so we have a clear idea of what we're looking at up here.
Sure. Mickey, do you want to take this one, since this is your slide?
All right, so the first and foremost, we talk about infrastructure. We're not looking at doing a whole lot next year. That's a big budget item. But we do have our wireless network. We do have to pay, and that's what we pay to Time Warner's $38,000 a year for our Wi-Fi. We are looking at purchasing at least one more set of tablets. Three more sets of tablets, so we'd have a classroom set of 4. And those 4 tablets that we then would use for the teacher technology group, they would have their own set in the classroom, and they would be the initial group to do the pilot program. So it'd be in the fall, starting in the fall. The next year, the 1920 school year, that's where we're looking to start updating our infrastructure. So we're looking at our access points, we're looking at a controller, we're looking at a firewall, we're looking at a filter, and putting all of that together. We have talked that the access points, the little things we have in the ceiling, little square boxes. They have new devices out there that we're going to save from the traditional controller sense, $20,000 to $30,000 on new access points. The reason why we have to update that is the ones we have is specifically at Lake Bluff and Atwater are no longer supported, meaning if something goes wrong, we're just kind of done. We can't do anything. So that's something that's really taking some importance there. laptops and the labs. So we've got Chromebooks in carts all over the district. A lot of those were donated through seed or PTOs. They are getting old. We have Samsung Chromebooks. I believe we have roughly 300 of the 400 devices we have in the district are Samsung Chromebooks. Those are 6 years old now. The life expectancy of those is 4 years. To credit to our students, they're in phenomenal shape. Where I came from, ours aren't lasting that long, but here they look great. I'm going to say we're using them well. Okay, they are in use frequently throughout the day, so that's fantastic. Then we reach the tablets side, and that's where we have the initial expense for the first group of tablets, bringing us to a total that you see on the far right.
All right, so
Yeah.
so that number is adding what?
How did I come up
Like
with that
8
number?
more classrooms? Like how many?
That number is three grade levels then at that point
For every student.
for every student at those grade levels.
So I guess that was what I was trying to get at earlier about accessibility. Like, at what point, like, I feel like we're not, like, we haven't had enough conversations with the teachers and other groups to know that we want tablets for every single student. So this is like this is like the high end of what it could be.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and again, these numbers get changed, and that's why we need to be able to have a starting point to say, like, this would be the option. This would be a high end type of option. So if we decided that we just needed it for every other classroom, then we'd be able to scale that down. So that's some of the work that we'll do through the pilot program to be able to look at, you know, where we would land from a budget standpoint.
So as we look to providing a device for every student, I mean, is the intent there that, the intent is the student has that device, right? They essentially are borrowing that device, own that device. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, we'll see. So again, if you accessibility is what our key is. So we don't necessarily need to have kids walking around with that device all the time. If we can figure out a structure that's efficient, that we can have students have access to what they need when they need it, that might be something that, you know, where they would have a device, or it might not be.
Yeah,
So
I
we're
mean,
still working through that.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is, I mean, I'm not sure that, you know, every student needs to have a device
Right.
to that extent, but I could also, I guess, argue that maybe by having the device that's sort of assigned to them, they could customize it within limits to make better use of it, you know, individually, than just having a pool of devices where they pull one off the rack, essentially, you know, which, I mean, I guess that would be a question I would want to understand is, what are we losing by sort of having more of a shared sort of device model versus a one-to-one student model?
What we found with when you start sharing devices like that, and I see it right now, especially with the iPads that I have in my office, I send those out to different classrooms and I work with the teachers in doing a project. What ends up happening is that the students sign into that device and they don't sign out. And so the next student picks up that device and the other person's still signed in. They either are saving projects to that other person's account, they're pulling information from that account, and if you have the right, or I should say the wrong student, they may be deleting information from that account. So that really speaks to why we need an individual type device. Now, as far as using it all the time, you know, like Brian said, we don't necessarily have to have it in our hands all the time. There's no need for that a lot of times, but there is need to have access to it to pull up information when you need it. I know as a classroom teacher, if I had to go and pull out, every time I pull out laptops, you're talking 5 minutes of class time. Then you got to get them started. And so by the time it's all done and people have settled down, you're talking 10 minutes maybe that I've lost of class time in a 45-minute class. I mean, 45 minutes when I was in my classroom. So if I had that opportunity, there's a lot of time that it could have spent with instruction as opposed to just passing out devices.
So what is the range then? And I know this is somewhat to be determined, it sounds like. But
Right.
I mean, is the one sort of end of the spectrum, you know, each student gets assigned a device, they sort of have that device throughout their career in the Shorewood schools, they take that device home with them potentially, you know, that's sort of like, it really is, they're essentially borrowing it and for their use, all the time. And I guess the other end of the spectrum is, we have devices in a pool, and, like you just laid out. Where we pull from it, we maybe lose some things with that, but is that one extreme where they have it and take it home and everything? Is that sort of on the table or not? What do we?
I think that's what we work through with the pilot. I think that's we kind of see what range that we think is the most effective. Taking feedback from our students and from our teachers and our families, and there's a lot of different models that are out there, but we want to make sure that we can get something that's kind of good for our use here in Shorewood. So, I would say, everything's on the table. And we're looking at, from a pilot standpoint, being able to have the opportunity for students to have their own device, right? From a pilot standpoint, just to make sure that we would have that covered. And then if we need to adjust that, and we find out that, maybe having, a set for every other classroom works, then we could back it down from there. But that's just the progression.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand what the sort of parameters
Limits,
are
yeah.
for the pilot per se, because I certainly know there are districts out there that have gone to that extreme. They give every kid an iPad, and they deal with a lot of loss prevention. Some of them it goes really well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different possible outcomes there.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think somewhere we have to, this kind of goes to our conversation with the ladies before, we have to, not just on a pilot level, but on a larger conversation, assess what is the current utilization or technology approach that the teachers have, and what do they envision being kind of their current sweet spot. Maybe it's a zero, maybe it's a little, and what is preferred. Does that then manifest in making this kind of a model making sense, where it means everybody does have to have it, or we find out that their sweet spot is something less than that, and so something else works. And I know you said that there's a piece to get to the teachers, and you had probably some initial conversations, but that's the place where these two pieces have to come together. And
Yeah.
because to have a lot of to do a device for every student and then find out we use them substantially less than all the time is just a significant investment that we don't need to make.
Right. Yeah, and
Use our resources otherwise.
that's why we're doing the pilot, just to make sure that we're as accurate as possible. And again, we could slow this progression down whenever we would want to. We just can't go any faster. So we wanted to be able to provide kind of the most deliberate. What's that?
That's an easier problem.
Yeah, right. So kind of the easiest, quickest process that we could possibly do. If everything goes great, then that's what this is built off of. If we need to back it off, then then that's easier to be able to process.
Can I
Although
ask you about unintended costs? Because I'm just wondering, if we go to the extreme and we have devices for every kid, and it's great, and they're getting heavy use, and everyone's technology is great. Personnel-wise, do you really think with 3 people you can cover the district's technology needs if we go to that sort of extreme example?
Yeah, it's a great question. The short answer is yes. When you start looking at the management systems we have in place with the MacBooks and the iPads, it's very easy at this point to just push stuff out to them, to pull stuff back. That was one of the first things I worked with Jack and James on, to make sure we're using Jamf, Casper Jamf Suite, to get that honed in so it is being utilized to its fullest potential, because it wasn't before. The Chromebook management is, you can't get any easier than that. The only issues that you come up with are your day-to-day help desk type tickets. Now, when I started here, we had a help desk that was over 250 tickets were open. Right? I saw your eyes. We're under 40 right now. We could easily be under 20 if we just sat down and hammered some stuff out. So I really focused on getting that down to a manageable level, so we can have, in many cases, same-day service. And so that puts myself out there, puts Jack out there, and James out there. So we're really trying to focus on that. We have divided our tasks up accordingly. So if there's a certain issue, one of us handles that issue, and so we really worked on the management piece of that. But yet all of us can move to the other position as well.
So can I ask too, if the assumption that the Wi-Fi purchasing would be different, or by partnering with the village on dissemination? that was included in the plan. I'm not articulating that well.
Yeah, I know what
but
you're talking about.
Assuming that wouldn't happen, or if there's some conflict in that, does that drastically change the budget aspect of things?
No, if you look at 2021, 22, you see that our infrastructure costs decrease. Right now, we're in a 3-year contract with Time Warner Cable. I've talked to Pat about this, is there anything we can do about that. WISNet has a program that we can connect through UWM, and interestingly enough, we have the antenna already set up. It looks like somebody tried that at one point. That would reduce our cost from $38,000 a year to $12,000 a year at today's dollars.
So can we drill into that just a little more? So right now, I think what I'm hearing is that we basically have purchased, or we're under contract, some sort of managed service agreement for the Wi-Fi infrastructure. And is that actually the physical devices that are in the ceiling, or is that
This is you go home, turn on your cable at home, get your access. That's Time Warner coming into your house. That's the same thing that we have here. We just have 2 gigabytes worth of data coming through.
So that's the actual.
Yes.
You're talking about the actual internet pipe that's coming.
Correct.
Essentially.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So do we own? What infrastructure do we actually own versus sort of lease? I mean, so obviously we're leasing bandwidth. I think what you're saying is we're under contract right now. We're buying that from Time Warner, internet bandwidth. We could get that from another source,
Correct.
potentially much cheaper for equivalent bandwidth or more. But what about the other stuff, like the actual switches, the router, the firewall? Do we own that stuff?
We own all that. We do pay a licensing fee every year for the firewall and our filter. Service contract. That's all it is. We have to keep that up.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we own it all.
We own it all. So we would actually be, as part of the budget that we have here, what's under the infrastructure column, we would be replacing that. For example, we'd replace all the access points, over time.
Correct. So in 1920, we'd be doing that.
Okay.
As a goal.
So I mean, is that? I mean, I'm wondering, is that? I don't know what options there are. I mean, does it make sense for us to own those technology pieces, or is there some arrangement where we could sort of outsource some of that infrastructure cost, or not? Have we looked at possibilities there, or do they exist?
I haven't heard of anything like that. I mean, basically, you're talking a lease program, so every 6 years we just get new access points come in and out. I have not heard of anything like that. No one's ever proposed that to me, which is usually something that they would do.
Sure.
So.
Okay. So your team is actually then with help with service contracts in place. We don't own all that equipment. We're getting our internet bandwidth from Time Warner or another source. What about between the buildings right now? That's like we have a sort of long-range wireless connection.
Yep.
Between them. We own all that equipment.
Yes, we do. We have a Ubiquity point-to-point air server on the roof.
Yep.
That goes to Lake Bluff and goes to Atwater. We're also looking at possibly doing some redundancy between the 3 buildings, just in case something should happen. We'll have a backup with that. We had talked about trying to get fiber to go to those buildings.
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask, is that
cost-wise. So if we look at how many times our internet has gone down from here to the elementary schools, twice, once since I've been here, maybe 3 times. Not since I've been here, once since I've been here, but 3 times total. And the reason for that was a power supply just went. We went over there and we literally unplugged one, plugged a new one in, and we're done. So that is a very secure system we have going on right now, and it just makes sense to keep it going.
is the bandwidth adequate?
We get 750 megabytes of throughput up there, so that's more than enough. For an elementary school that size, you could get by with about 300 tops. And that's assuming that school was maxed out on devices, which they're not. They are hitting about 100 megabytes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because I know in the plan you sort of did a projection, because we're assuming students will increase their usage and such. But even with that, like that existing wireless connection between the buildings should be adequate.
Even with that, it should be more than adequate. And if we do it right, the bandwidth that they would use will be minimized anyway.
So, and Patrick, just sort of referring to your, the document that you gave us here, which, I mean, am I reading this correctly, that essentially we're just saying that there's approximately $85,000 additional a year is what's required, and we've managed to, we can cover the rest, I guess is, that's not the proper way to put it, through some of the savings that Mickey and his team have been able to put in place.
Correct. And what we're doing in this, you know, by sort of front end loading 18, 19 with some $17, $18, it gives us the ability to, again, like I said, you're purchasing the next school year's devices at the end of the previous school year. And again, I think the important part about that is, you know, to make sure that those devices are in-house so that Mickey and Jack and James and then Nelson over the summer have the ability to effectively get all of those devices ready, handle all of any of the device upgrades or repairs that need to be done on existing devices, so that come September, those devices are all ready to go and ready to roll out. And so, you know, we're sort of managing the purchase of those devices a few months before the new fiscal year begins, just so that we have them in-house and we're ready as soon as school is out, even before we're ready to start getting those devices ready, so that we don't have any outage at the
Do
beginning of
these
the year.
budget numbers talk about, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking all of the apps and licensing and software and programs and all the things that could effectively also increase costs as teachers think about how they want to use this. And I know in the past there's been some concerns because PTOs have covered some of it, and there's been sort of a not organized manner in which some of this is shared or done class to class. So I'm wondering, how do we keep costs, are those costs included in here, and how are we going to budget for those sort of variables?
Yeah, so for the most part, the apps are very inexpensive or free. We start talking about numbers, even if we did, let's just say we do 1 year of it, 500 devices, you're probably talking $1,000 for a group of apps. But with our management system, you don't need to be doing something like that. Really, if a teacher needs devices for a set of tablets, we could actually purchase 40 apps, push them out to that tablet. When we're done with it, we can then push a button and they all come back off of all the teacher tablets, can be reused then somewhere else. We can warehouse all those apps, and what we have now is still going on, and it's getting tweaked. We have an app called Self-Service. Self-Service is our own iTunes store that we use. All apps that we purchase, that we assign to the different iPads, you can go into Self-Service, you can tap the app that you want, you can install it. The students can install it then at that time. So we have full control over all that. We can add them, we can take them off. In the past, when the PTOs were doing this, what ended up happening, everybody had their own iTunes account, and it was a Wild West out there. And those apps are gone. We can't do anything with it. So when that iTunes account password disappeared or something else, so did all the apps that went with it, which was unfortunate. So we really set up the store properly. That was one of the first things I wanted to make sure we got done right away.
Well, things like software suite for, you know, Susan, there was Sheila Wing was saying that having she teaches hemp for college, so she doesn't need much in terms of technology other than word processing
Correct.
programs and tablets.
Correct.
Assuming all that licensing, that's all factored.
Yep.
So all the licensing already, like, I don't even know how substantial it is. Asking, like, for all the Google accounts that all the kids have, essentially.
That's easy. That's zero.
It's zero,
Yeah.
actually.
It costs for a Chromebook, it costs $25 to $30 for a Chromebook license to manage the Chromebooks, but otherwise the Google accounts are free for education and unlimited storage.
So can I ask about, so going back to the infrastructure, so no matter, I guess just to understand, like, those are costs that we are gonna have to do no matter how many devices we have? Is
Right.
that true?
That's correct.
And then, kind of just going back to the pilot. So, I guess maybe I didn't read this close enough, but how many pilots are going to be happening in each building? Like,
So this, you're looking at,
Okay.
so let's go back to this, 'cause I think you've alluded to this. So the first one, we're looking just a group of 4 teachers, so we want to keep the cost down. So one
4
from every
teachers
building.
total,
4
okay.
teachers total, and then 1 per building. And any teacher that is ready to take off with it, we also want to get them a device. Not for their class, not for their entire, every student in their class, but one for themselves, so they can start experimenting. There are things that the teacher can do just with a tablet in the classroom to change up what their practices are for the better, where they get out and they're mobile, sitting with students more so than their traditional stand in front of the classroom. So that would essentially compose the tech team. And I'm hoping we don't have 4 teachers. I'm hoping we've got 10, 15 teachers that may want to be a part of this, and 4 then, 1 from each school, become the initial pilot group.
So, just let me know if we're sort of working towards this, but Hillary alluded as well to the, you presented in the technology plan sort of building upon the access question of maybe doing Wi-Fi, across the village to sort of reach those students that don't have it accessible to them already.
Mhm.
I'm curious, I guess. Sort of brings up a few questions. One of which may be something that we need to do a little bit more research. But do we have we done any kind of assessment really on what technology students have available in their home, or is it anecdotal at this point?
No, we have. So I'm going to go back to what Hillary had said, and you had said it as well, as far as with the whole getting a Wi-Fi out to everybody. That's potential in the future. I'm working with Aruba, which is a manufacturer that does access points and infrastructure, to see what is possible out there for it. It's definitely happening in the future somewhere. I'd love to be a part of that here. It's not ready yet. So that's, just keep that in the back of our head. So from there, to address your question, there are companies out there that offer hotspots. I mean, you can go to Verizon and get a hotspot and loan it out. But there's some flaws with that too. Your data that you put on there, kids can just go home and stream all they want all night long. And that is incredibly detrimental. Any of us that have teenagers, we know that they'd be on YouTube for 20 hours a day. So there's a company, one of them I know off the top of my head I've worked with, called Kajit. Kajit offers hotspots that limit the data and allow us full control over what they go to, how much time they're on it, when they're on it, and you can check it out from the library. So that would provide opportunities for those students. Now, as far as the number of students that we have, we did do a survey. I did middle school, high school survey, just to find out what type of numbers we're looking at there. Of that, we found is roughly 7% of our students have limited or no data available at home. When I say limited data, it means they have access to the internet at home on their phone or some other device, or a hotspot that they have themselves, but it's limited into how much they can actually use. So it's not a whole lot of our students, but you don't want to leave 7% of our students behind either.
Right. One question I would have is just where do those students live? Because we do have a significant percentage of students who aren't in the village. How are they represented in that sort of no access group?
Right. That I don't know. We didn't gather the data on that. I just looked at who our students were.
But that's something that we can tease out again,
Absolutely.
as we're drilling down into this plan to make sure that we've got that needs to be built in, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Correct.
Potentially.
Conceivably, if you're a non-resident student, that
Correct.
They could check that out
Mhm.
versus a kid who didn't have internet access at home, but Schroeder provided the clue with that plan.
Right.
Would have access.
Correct.
Correct.
I see, when I read the report, that's what I saw that was kind of intimidating, is that lack of access for students that might not be accessible within the district.
Correct.
Was that your thinking?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Otherwise, we would, if everyone lived in Charlotte, they
Right. And that's a discussion that is going to expand our borders as well, that we'd have to bring in some other districts and really, but that's blowing some things up well beyond what this discussion today would be. It's a great future talk, and so.
Can I ask, you mentioned for looking at character and citizenship, looking at bullying, looking at kind of monitoring usage. One of the things that came up in our meeting was just this idea of how technology can, lead to anxiety or kind of the social and emotional kind of growth that students have to have and learn about how to use that technology and how not to. And so where is that fitting in here?
You're really talking about essentially training teachers working with the students, that social emotional piece, guidance counselors working with the students. Yeah, I don't know. That's probably the best answer for you at this point. Tim, do you have anything?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because it's certainly something that we have to plan for as we work with the pilot team, is what is appropriate use of a piece of technology look like. The interesting part, honestly, is some of our students who do have some mental health concerns, honestly, are in online schools. So interestingly enough, they're accessing school using a piece of technology. So it's kind of this really odd, like, yes, we have to make sure that we have a digital citizenship and a quality digital citizenship program as we roll out devices to students, and that needs to come with their parent training. So it's not just student training, it's also parent training. Having gone through that, it's giving parents permission to say, you're not going to have a device in your room, right? So yes, the school gave you this device, it's not going in your room, right? And after 9 o'clock, it's down in the kitchen and we're done. And so helping train parents as well as train kids how to use it appropriately. But then also on the flip side, still giving access to our Shorewood high quality instruction through a piece of technology for a kid who may struggle is also the flip side of it.
Yeah, and so I see it as part of the character education piece as far as the bullying, along with, like you said, guidance counselors. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, kids are in this world anyway, right? Whether we provide them with devices or not. So this is really something that we should be providing anyway. Some guidance on. So we'll just have to work through kind of the best way for us to deliver that as part of the pilot. But it's certainly something that we need to, I think, be stronger in.
It's not working. Yeah, it's on, but it's not projecting. I don't know. Anyway, question around the LCD projector, smart boards. Have you been looking at moving kind of away from the LCD projectors and into the smart board TVs? And we recently purchased a couple at my institution for my program, and we're advised, actually by someone here, to go that route versus the LCD projectors. And I was wondering what your thoughts were.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of the touch panels.
Okay.
And the reason being, they're just not utilized the way they truly should be or could be in the classroom. So that's part one. And that's same with the smart boards. They're used but not used. Like I'd like to see, like having the littles get up there and really manipulate everything they can on there. However, when you start going that route, we start looking at tablets. Teachers I've worked with in the past all of a sudden stopped using their smart boards because their tablet became a mobile smart board. They would sit down with the students would draw on the tablet. They could give the tablet to the students. They could do it there. They were comfortable in their seat. They didn't have to go up on the board. They could still use it, but what they found out, they used it even less at that point. So when you talk about the LCD projectors versus the touch panels and smart boards, the LCD projectors now, the one that we've invested, purchased a couple now, those are 15 to 20,000 hour bulbs. So we are looking 10 plus years for one bulb. I mean, first LCD projector I had, we got lucky to have a year out of it, and there was a $250 investment to get a new bulb. Here, we're not dealing with that, and these are much brighter. So even in the rooms when you have that strong sunlight coming in, you can still see the projector. So in the plan that you saw, obviously you went through that. That's what I'm really looking at investing in, because it does offer that versatility that we can just throw something like an Apple TV up and stream right to it.
So then we'd be moving away from the smart boards.
As the smart boards would die out,
We would.
we wouldn't necessarily be replace them.
Right, so let's be really clear about that.
Correct.
That this is an evolution process. It's not like we've invested all this money in smart boards, every room's got a smart board, and next year we're not going to use smart boards. Like,
Correct.
This is an evolution of a process, just like any piece of technology is going to kind of beyond its useful life, and there's something new that's more effective, more cost effective, that'll be part of that evolution. So I would expect that to be multiple years as we would roll forward.
I don't know. I mean, it's almost like one in every room. Seems like it's a lot. I would say as well, though, that the smartboard issue, as we phase out of some of these computers, these older, we have a lot of old iMacs. Next year we're looking at getting rid of our 2009 iMacs. I mean, 10-year-old computers, phenomenal, right? We don't necessarily need to put another $2,000 computer in there to run the smartboard. There are other devices that we can look, if that's all they're using it for, look at a cheaper device that will do just that, that'll provide the proper tool for the teacher in that classroom to meet their needs, and doesn't have to be something super fancy. But that'll all depend on individual teachers, on what their needs are, as opposed to just say, hey, this is a cheap device, it'll work just fine for you. We don't want to go that route.
The other question I have is if we go to assuming that max level where we're actually having the tablet essentially
Mhm.
as a student, you talked about the useful life of the device is about 4 years, right? So if I'm a kid and I start in kindergarten, we have to also plan the cycle. So we have
Replacements.
So in the plan, you see 2023 on there. Essentially, that group, that last group on the right, the 10, 11, 12, would be recycling those devices at that point, selling them because that's kind of the maximum price you get at that point, and redoing it all over again. So I color-coded the red and the black, so you had different groups there, so that the far right group would be the first to cycle, and the next one. But quite honestly, you're talking 2023, 24 at that point. I don't know what we're going to be using. If it, well, there's a lot of truth to that. So that leaves a lot of flexibility as far as what may happen in the future. Yes.
I will not support chipping our students if that's what you're
The Google Glasses?
I don't know about that either. I know there's that company, but
No.
So Pat, can you talk through what if I'm understanding this correctly, like next year is still a pilot phase, and so we don't actually know until after we have an opportunity to get teacher and parent input next year on what we're going to be doing, right? So next year is going to be our chance to look at what we need.
Mhm.
And so what are the budget implications for next year?
So the budget implications for next year are that we can, with a $30,000 impact, or essentially what the IT department is requesting, additional funding in the amount of $30,000 to fund everything that they're going to need for the 18-19 school year. So again, it's the impact of the infrastructure is minimal. The impact of the devices we can build into the budget with a relatively small comparative to our entire budget impact. So we can get through the 18-19 school year, get through the pilot with very little or a very manageable impact.
So that 38,000 is already budgeted because we knew we had to pay
Yes.
that.
Yep.
Mhm.
So that you're talking about for the tablets then?
Mhm.
The pilot tablets is the cost that they're asking for?
Right.
I would also like to propose that you consider doing more than one teacher at each school so that they actually have a colleague, just for supportive purposes, right? Sometimes it's easier to do something when we can bounce ideas, and I But to the extent that creates some synergy and some ability to collaborate within a school environment, I mean, I just think there's value in getting more
Yeah.
achieved on a concentrated basis.
I mean,
I think the other thing that we'll be able to do, we currently, it's not like we don't have anything, going on. So we've got classrooms through some seed grants and that type of thing. So I think some of this is like we'll have 4 formal kind of classrooms, and then we'll be able to pair up some teachers that have just been like outstanding through their own volition and grants, just to be able to cluster people. I think we'll be able to do that pretty well as we go.
so then,
Question, Pat, you talked about the Time Warner contract. Is that a term little contract? I know it's 3 years, but is there a provision for liquidated damages provision for something early?
Well, the liquidated damages were that we pay out the contract.
oh.
So, and the reason, that contract, I mean, they put quite a bit of infrastructure in order to provide that for us. And so they want to at least have an opportunity to earn what their investment was back and not lose money on the project, so.
So we can look forward to a budget request, or I guess this being in your proposed budget,
Yes.
18-19?
Yeah, as part of an impact statement. So we'll have a series of things that we're looking at. So this will be one of them.
And then when will we be hearing kind of back from you about the pilot study?
When would you like to hear back from Mickey in regards to the pilot study? So I think the next step, and again, from our earlier conversation with the SEA, is to be able to develop that technology work group, to be able to just get their work going. So it's March. May is usually a wash, so we'll probably be able to meet, maybe in April with that group. I don't know.
Summer?
I mean, yeah, I think probably August would be a good time to be able to get an update on what the plan is for the year. That seems to be reasonable. That group can probably meet at least a couple times before that, and go from there. Does that seem reasonable, Mickey?
Absolutely.
I still had a couple questions.
Oh.
One was regarding, it was on page 2 of the plan, I think, but phase 1, 2017-18. My question is, are we in the middle of that? Because it was kind of written in the future tense, such as teachers will be able to apply, and I was wondering if that, where we were in terms of that phase.
That's where we're beginning.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to look at it.
Gotcha.
Really, we wanted to get this presented to you, get some feedback from you, and then begin that next phase, I guess we could say, of this whole thing.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the update. Thanks for the work. Yeah, I guess.
Sorry.
I had others, but the fact that we're pushing this out a bit. I mean, there were questions around the microphones, and I had kind of more detailed questions that is there a need for? And this is something that having teacher representation at the table, I think we'll get some clarity, and that's going to happen. But I'm just wondering, do we need to have every teacher mic'd up to their speakers and noise concerns, and does that also decenter kind of the student-centered classroom that we're headed towards, where one can project their voice more than everybody else? And just wondering, because we don't have big classrooms and our teachers have pretty good lungs. So I was just curious about that, but that's something I would count on the teachers at the table to bring to the table.
Yeah, those are all really good pilot questions, and we'll just
So
kind of work through that.
Those were the other questions, and I'll just leave it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more item I would add, and just as we sort of work through the pilot and we think about how the technology is going to be used, one thing we haven't addressed is our wellness. I'm going to hit you with the wellness result, Tim. And I think trying to figure out. I think we have some work to do in sort of better defining that, but trying to figure out how it makes sense to sort of incorporate the technology piece in there. But I think one thing might be, as we talked earlier, we talked about, there are sort of appropriate uses of the technology,
Right.
even within our classrooms, right? And one way to sort of incorporate that is those guidelines prepared to say what those would look like, but I think we need to look in, at the literature and what are the best practices and sort of understand, in what ways shouldn't we be using technology because it could have a detrimental effect, or unintended consequences. And maybe that's a way we could also sort of make sure that the technology is reflected in that last result.
And Rodney, I want to make sure that you don't think we left wellness off for any other, like this, there is a huge component of wellness when it comes to technology in the classrooms that we have to be cognizant of at all times, and that's why digital citizenship has to be a part of instruction. One of the reasons that we somewhat left wellness off of this presentation was because we know you guys want to look at wellness again, and so for us to try to align it and then say, okay, it's tweaked here, it's tweaked there, we just didn't want to go there. So I think once you're able to have that conversation around wellness, this is what we really want it to be, I am happy to sit down with Mickey and say, we got to make sure that this is integral with our technology plan, because it absolutely needs to be a piece of it. Rodney, I hear you 110%.
And I think it'll help inform, having this type of vision or thought process. I mean, this is something that hasn't been there. That'll help form the context to which we're talking about wellness also, that we didn't have when we originally made it. So.
It might give us some of the tools we need to address
Yeah.
some of the issues.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
See you in the
Thank
summer. All right. So now we get to see the beta version of our new district website. There should be more excitement. Yay!
So Caitlin, Ted, and Mickey have been working hard on the new website, both looking at different vendors and options, and then being able to make that transition. So we had hoped to have it done at this point, and just been a little bit short. One of the things we want to make sure that we do is take it out to some parent groups, and so we just haven't been able to quite complete that yet. But we wanted to make sure that you were at least able to take a look at what it's going to approximately look like, and then we'll bring it back then for a launch, or at least probably Ted and I will bring it back for a launch, relatively soon after we go through the parent groups.
So
right.
before we take a look at the initial draft of the new site and get distracted by its beauty, we just want to begin by saying that the primary purpose of this effort to upgrade our district site is to improve our district communications, and specifically under our OE9 objective to assure the timely flow of information, appropriate input, and strategic two-way communication between the district and the public that builds understanding and support for district efforts. So we're going to go through a few things before we look at the site, including a refresher on how we chose our vendor, the process we went through from the transition from the old site and the data to the new site, the feedback we've received from some stakeholders so far, and then the end results of the new design, and the advantages and improvements that this new site will have over our previous site. So in terms of the initial review of the vendors, there was a 3-person team that managed all of these efforts, which was Mickey, Ted, and myself. So just a refresher, I think I mentioned it at a previous board meeting, but going through the RFP process, we reached out to roughly 30 companies that we found after researching the top website companies in Milwaukee and Chicago area. And then we also posted our RFP requests publicly on our website, so that got us a few more bids as well. 14 responded to the RFP. And then in the end, after looking through them, we had 2 finalists, both of which were highly rated in the education world. The first was School Messenger, and the second was EdLeo. So we called many references for both. We explored their sites, and maybe one of the best things that we did is that we researched school districts who use these sites that weren't on the reference list, and we called them, so we got some really raw feedback. And then kind of after taking all of those things into account, Edleo checked the most boxes, so we went with Edleo.
Yes, so just to follow up with that and mention some other pros of Edleo, the company, the vendor that we went with. So Edleo has experience working with 8,000 schools and district websites across North America, so they've done this a whole lot. Specifically, they build websites for K-12 customers, so that's their whole focus. And that consideration was pretty important to us because there are lots of other web firms and vendors out there that serve a range of clients. But K-12 websites are pretty unique and serve a pretty unique kind of audience. So we felt that was helpful that we chose a vendor that works specifically with schools and school districts. We noticed that the look and feel of their websites was very modern, clean. They used updated, current technology in building their websites, which I think all three of us appreciated. And also, last but not least, Edleo submitted the most cost-effective proposal we received out of the bunch, especially because in their proposal they also offered a companion app at a minimal cost, which we were pretty excited about. So not only the website redesign, but also a companion app. We'll touch more upon that in a moment, but just wanted to mention that in terms of considerations for our vendor selection.
Ted, can you talk through just the differences in prices of what we are currently paying and then where it landed
That's
right
towards
now?
the end.
All right.
Yeah, we're gonna touch it.
Appropriate time to
Yeah,
maybe line
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. Yeah. It's coming though.
I apologize. Continue on.
Okay.
No, you're fine. So in terms of the process we went through in the transition is that our team of three first reviewed the old site. We kind of picked each section apart piece by piece. We got rid of unnecessary pages and information that was out of date. We also spent a great deal of time reworking the navigation in an attempt to make it more intuitive for the stakeholders, because that was probably some of the biggest feedback we got back from the parent and community survey, was that it was not intuitive at all. And then we worked with our Edleo project manager to complete a new sitemap and transfer over and reconfigure all that content and data. So we had meetings and conversations as well with principals and like key staff that would be working with the website to collect their feedback on the initial version, to get their thoughts. We also worked with Edleo to do multiple design drafts. So it went through multiple versions. So the design you're seeing is pretty much close to final, pending you guys' thoughts. And then they were also really prompt with managing our design edits, so it's been great working with them. And then Mickey especially worked with Edleo to sync our student information system, Infinite Campus, so they are both the website is compatible with Infinite Campus, which our previous site did not have. And we can talk about that in a little bit.
Great. So the other thing we wanted to mention was just gaining stakeholder feedback, which is very important, including your feedback. That's a very important thing for us, especially at this stage in the process, obviously before we launch the site publicly. And now that we have a draft site in place, being able to get feedback from key stakeholders on the site, including students, staff, parents, community members, and alumni. We recently hosted a focus group with a diverse group of high school students where we asked students to search the new draft site for particular items. Afterwards, students responded to a survey regarding their experience using the new website, including ease of use and things like that. So just some highlights from the feedback we received. So 75% of them were able to find all the items we asked for in the time allotted. 67% found that information was easier to find on the new website. The others said it was around the same. 100% of the students preferred the new site to the old website, which is obviously something you want to hear. So that was good. So we're actually planning to hold additional focus groups, including a focus group within the next few weeks with a diverse group of parents and community members, essentially conducting a similar usability test to allow them to use the new draft site and provide us with feedback. We are also planning to share the new website with the Shorewood Alumni Association to get feedback from our graduates. As Caitlin mentioned, we've already shared the draft site with principals and staff at our 4 schools, so we're getting that internal feedback from staff. So we're basically collecting all of this feedback and incorporating it into the new site to improve it and optimize it as much as we can before we publicly launch it.
Can I ask about that? Because this was something that came up at the rec advisory meeting Monday night. And so I'm wondering, obviously the recreation department's whole registration system and everything is being merged into this new site. Is that right? Yeah. So I'm wondering if they can be one of the stakeholders to sort of, and I don't, maybe this was thought of already.
Sorry, when
but I'm just thinking of the wide community usage that the rec site in particular gets. And so I'm wondering, I think the rec advisory board could be a good resource to help sort of test specifically that part of the website. Maybe some seniors too, to not only do the school part of it. But I know they were a little concerned, or just, I know they were saying that they had to do, particularly because summer registration is going to open up in the next few weeks, that the timing is a bit difficult. Will there be any, and depending on when this does launch, will that complicate matters more, or do you anticipate that being a seamless transition for all those registrations that are going to happen on April 1st?
So, when speaking with Ed Leo about this, they said there shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
I've been in constant communication with the rec department about it. They're definitely getting all their stuff done quickly so that it can help with the launching process, because that their part of the website was something that needed a lot of updates from them. So I already have had meetings with the entire rec department, and so they all now have access to edit and update the recreation part. So I apologize for not saying that I include them with the schools, but that's a good thing to note.
They should be, but I'm just curious that they just have and unique users that ultimately wouldn't perhaps normally come to the district site, sort of those families that are not in school yet and the ones that are out of school.
That's a really good point.
Or village community members. Yeah.
Right.
It's something we'll definitely follow up on. Were you done?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, you're fine. Questions are welcome. So, of course, the most important thing we're probably going to discuss is the results you're going to see with this new site and the improvements that this site's going to have over the previous site. One of the biggest pluses was, of course, the annual cost savings. Right now, we have an annual cost savings with this new site of $5,500, plus we now have an app linked to our site for use by parents, staff, and community. And if you remember the old site, it was not very compatible for phone use, which is super important, especially in this day and age. So that was a key thing. You'll see definitely an improved site appearance and strong alignment with our current district branding. So you're going to see the red and gray, not the green and blue. And hopefully you'll notice more intuitive navigation. Another cool feature is you're going to see live social media feeds integrated into the site homepage at the bottom, which is a big draw, especially for students and even potential families and students who are checking out our site. And then on the admin side, there's a really easy to use interface for editing on the back end, which is a big bonus for people like me because easier for staff to use, which means they'll be on the site editing more, which means content will stay updated more. Also, one of the cool features that we all liked was the capability for Parallax video on the homepage. So right now, when we check it out, you'll see there's a picture, but our plan is when it gets nicer out to use a drone to fly over all 4 schools, so there'll be a running video of all of
Do
this.
we have a district drone?
We're working on it.
We're working on that. It's part of the plan.
We're borrowing it this spring if we don't have one.
Okay.
But that was really cool when we were looking at sites that already used Edleo and seeing like the video feature on the homepage, really enticing. And then another benefit, which I briefly mentioned, was that they're compatible with Infinite Campus, which is really nice, which we didn't have before. They also sync with Google Calendar, which Final Site had major issues when it came to calendar syncing. So that's a huge plus, I know, for staff as well. And then Edleo is a more modernized and improved web content management system. In terms of the app, it provides a one-stop shop for teachers to contact parents directly through the app, grades and conference signups, forms, calendar events, event signups, the whole package. And once it's up, it's going to streamline things for parents and teachers alike, so they can do everything with one click of that app. And then
will parents be able to subscribe to our district calendar?
Yeah.
Via
Yeah.
Google,
Yep.
essentially?
Yeah. Google
Great.
Calendar. And the last thing, yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll quickly note about the app is that we're planning to roll out the app for the 2018-19 school year. So the website's going to be released a bit before the app, so we can educate our teachers and staff on the app first, so it can get its optimal use before we present it to the public.
So would it be rolled out like around forms and fees day?
Exactly. So we are now happy to show you.
I know.
It's pretty dramatic, Ted. I mean, this is. I was gonna say this is pretty.
But yeah, we're happy to show you this initial beta homepage for the website. We do want to emphasize that this is a draft and it's still being updated, so it's not yet complete. But we did want to give you a glimpse into what it looks like. And Caitlin's scrolling down.
So
You
I'll
can
go
scroll
through.
back up.
So we got feedback that they liked the layout of all of the tabs being at the top. We did change some tabs due to the feedback we got. So let me pull up. So if you look at the old site, these were our top columns. The new site, there's a few more, but one of the biggest things we got was athletics needed to be easy to find, and we didn't really have like a contact us area. So we could, I'll just kind of scroll over those. And then right here, obviously we have social media, but you'll see that again further down. So this area right here is where there'd be a video, which I think would be really cool. As you go down, these are some quick links. So we have Infinite Campus right there, the calendar, the staff directory. We recently got input that it'd be nice to have new families and enrollment information right on the home page. So with the old site, you had to go to family resources, go down and find enrollment. But this button brings you right to it. And of course, our facilities initiative. So you click that and it goes to facilities. Going down further, you'll see news and announcements. With our old site, we didn't have any visually pleasing effects, so it's nice to have some thumbnail pictures. Then we've got a second row of quick link buttons. We have the strategic plan, employment, donate, and contact us. And all of these buttons, especially too, were based off of feedback from community members, families, and staff. And then here at the bottom, we have live feeds of our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is really cool. So I just posted something tonight, and it shows in live time right away.
So remind me, what was the original, how did you get feedback from parents and community members? Was that the survey?
The survey, yeah.
Okay, so that was the survey.
That was the survey initially, and then we're gonna conduct an additional usability test now that they have something to react to
Okay.
specifically.
And the reason we
so
were-
then you've had one student focus group, and then you're gonna do this other one,
And alumni, too.
and you'll give us
And-
information, do you know when those are gonna be yet, or no?
We're still planning the parent community one and the alumni meeting. Still trying to get.
So would it be like an open call, are you inviting parents, or how is that gonna work?
We're working to try to get a diverse group together, although we're certainly open to inviting parents as well. Sometimes it's hard, honestly, to get people to commit, so.
Right. Yeah, so
The
you wanna
idea is to
invite-
have at least a base of people who say, yes, I'll make it, and then anyone's welcome. We're really just trying to collect feedback however we can.
Okay.
Okay. That was a good comment.
So how does this sort of layer over the email distribution list that we have now? We have, we're using Infinite Campus now, I guess. Like, the principals send out stuff via Infinite Campus. We still get sort of the district email, which I think comes from you, Caitlin. Which is more, sorry. But does this replace that, I guess, is my question? Like, we have the blog, I think, on the old site, right? Which also sends email notifications out if
Yeah.
something is posted there. Does that all goes away and?
It'll all be done through the website and app Sangha, because the app is called Sangha.
Sangha?
Yes. So that's
With a T?
SANG, like I sang, HA. Sang HA.
It's the name of their companion app.
So that's actually what Mickey synced with Infinite Campus is the app, and then the app runs straight through the website. So everything will be sent through that.
Okay.
So there won't be
It
multiple
does really simplify things.
multiple different, teachers and myself will send through that same system.
Okay.
But I'll have access to the entire district, and they'll have access to their
Okay.
classrooms.
I was missing this, so the teachers will actually send through it. Okay. So all the classrooms,
It's all been synced up, every classroom.
Okay. So the email chains from the teachers sort of go away at this point. And they just log into the website and compose it and
Into
send
the
it out?
app, yeah.
Oh, in the app, yeah. Okay. That
And
sounds
then,
great.
are there, I guess I don't know if there are, kind of other, websites, like the PTOs and does everything kind of come under this one now? Or is this now essentially what was on, is it covering everything that was on the old system?
Well,
Okay.
and I've gotten feedback from, Lake Bluff PTO's already reached out to me that they're getting rid of their site, and they just want a section on the website.
Okay.
Because they said it's an unnecessary cost. Sorry.
Right. So then, are we recommending just to keep things the same, like the Atwater and SIS, but also do the same, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Because they all right now, they all have sort of.
They all have their own site.
Their own site.
email,
Well, if they want their
Atwater
own
has
site, we haven't sat down with all the PTO, but
Yeah,
I think
exactly. We just want to let them know that that option's available,
Available?
rather than telling them, hey,
Yeah, yeah.
you have to migrate to this, you know what I mean? So we're just leaving that open.
but I would still put the redirect link on the new website.
Okay.
Can we click on some of these tabs?
Sure.
We've been able to drill down maybe
I'll go to board if you want. So what we're gonna be taking individual pictures to go. This is why it's a draft. It says message from you, Paru.
We need to have another S on Brian's face.
Yeah, no. This is just a temporary photo. I just wanted to give you a feel. But this would be a message from you.
Add content. So, that gets at, I know, if people have content, like the board, we want, because I don't know how much you've updated our content, so I would just send it to you.
Yep.
at this
I'll
point?
be like right after this presentation, this upcoming week, I'll be emailing
Okay.
who I haven't heard from to get feedback on the sections of the website.
Okay.
And I've actually been giving schools, especially like the front office staff who manage a lot of the content updating, I've been giving them already their own passwords and usernames so they can go into their sections and edit just little content. I do the overall design and everything, but the initial process of going through the old site was a little complicated and took a lot of time, but Edleo doing it was seamless. They did, and if for some reason something didn't get added to the new site that we noticed, we just tell them and they uploaded it right away. Yeah.
Are there ways to sort of delegate? I'm still, I think it's great that we're gonna like move all those email listservs, you know, into one place. But like, and so the teachers will use the app. They'll be able to send out to their class. What about like the room parents? You know, right now that's another. I'm just trying to think of all the different emails I get on any given week.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them from all different places. So could they'll also be covered somehow in there where they be able to have access or not?
Yeah, they can email the parents, they can schedule conferences right through the app.
This is the teachers.
Parents and teachers.
Oh.
So as a teacher, I may say March 14th, I want conferences from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in 15-minute increments with a 5-minute break in between. Enter. That goes out to all the parents, and the parents click on the time on the time that they want, and they're scheduled. And now the teacher has a list of who's coming when. The parent has a notification that they're scheduled to have a conference with so-and-so at this time. So they have that. You talked about room parents. You want to organize, we need somebody to bring 3 dozen cookies. So I need 3 people to each bring a dozen cookies. The parents can go in there and click on a button, say I got 12, and they know I need 2 more people to bring that. You have an outing, you have all these different events. It can all be done under the app. Permission slips as well, it's going on a field trip. So it's really a fantastic
So
app.
the permission slips are going to be electronic?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's huge.
Like the athletic permission slips to take my kid home on the bus.
I see.
That's probably the biggest one that.
A lot more
I'm
components
violated
and a learning curve, especially.
Right.
You have to get the teachers being able to use it, correctly.
Can it integrate with Infinite Campus? I mean, could the payments for the field trips be electronic as well, or not?
So they
Makes
can
really
it can do payments, but that's essentially through a PayPal type service,
Okay.
and there's a fee then that we'd have to pay for the payment. So I think we want to try to avoid that part of it.
So we still have to write checks.
Or I think Infinite Campus has something too, though, that we can do it on. So there's a way.
There's probably a way to have like an account. I don't know. But yeah.
So the emails will be populated from Infinite Campus then too, the parent contact emails?
Yes.
Because right now there's like a data collection step that the teachers do at the beginning of the year. You know, what email address do you want to be contacted at? So that goes away potentially as well. So.
That still goes through the Infinite Campus, and then that data is pulled into the website and the Sangha app.
I think this happens like separate from Infinite Campus even a lot of the time.
There-
Teacher level.
No, when you register, you should be able to put in there how you want to be contacted by your teacher.
Right.
So the
Yes.
teachers shouldn't be, well, perhaps, maybe
Still get
not.
Can we see the calendar?
What you're saying is no, that's not.
And that's also something that's still a work in progress because they have not added the recreation or athletics yet. But it's color coded. This will go to Sangha because it's also in the Sangha app. You actually enter, this is kind of strange, or different, but you enter calendar events through the Sangha app. So there's an Excel spreadsheet at the beginning of the year where I enter all the main ones, but if things come up, I enter them through the app and they populate in the website. So that's why if you click on them, it'll take you to the Sangha app.
So when you have these categories, so I can click on just show me Atwater Elementary.
Yeah.
Do we anticipate putting things in there like just athletic events or
Yeah,
performing arts
that's-
events? So if I just want to
yep.
see, right, I'm a community member, all I want to see is
The reason, the reason the rec and like athletic events are not up yet is because initially they just entered these categories through Infinite Campus, and since rec and
Right.
athletics are not on Infinite Campus, that's the only reason that you see the schools and the district.
So we can create additional categories.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Let's see.
And we're saving money.
And we're
Did I
saving
mention
money.
that? Did I mention we're saving money?
And
And so-
also with the staff directory, they haven't, I have to give them the Excel with the, it'll have more information, like the grade, the
Positions.
school, position, phone number, in addition to this, so they haven't.
Some of their teachers have their own class websites, I don't know.
That's going, you see that, yeah, that's gonna be going through the app. So we'll have to edit that over.
And then the rec, so this is like the tab for the rec to go into like actually registration. Okay.
Just
But that part's not.
follow up
set.
Pablo's question. So, you know, like some of the teachers have like in Google a classroom site. So that also gets, are you just sort of linking to that, or are you actually replacing that?
Link, yeah.
You just link it out.
Yeah, we don't want to replace any of that. That's a whole mess. But linking it there,
Fair enough.
yeah, then they can keep their own site that's personalized, what they feel comfortable with, and that's the important thing here.
Coming soon for TED.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the, let's say you do the community feedback groups in the next like month, are you thinking? Few weeks.
Yeah.
That this would go from beta to live in May?
I would say we're looking at, you know, April, May timeframe is what I would say. We want to do it before, you know, we want to do it as soon as possible. We want to have feedback from, you know, as many stakeholders as possible, but we don't want to wait
Right.
until the summer. We do want to launch it this
As soon
spring.
as possible? Okay.
Yeah.
And there's always gonna be some tweaks that need to be made once
Right.
it goes live, because that's how the site
Well,
works.
I mean, you'll get a
but
lot more feedback then,
just
too.
to get the best
Right.
version to start with
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
can is
Right.
important.
Right.
So I guess the only other two groups that I would maybe recommend, like, sharing it with would maybe be the bid. I don't know, do you go to those meetings? And then I know there's a marketing leadership meeting tomorrow. They would be probably a good group to, you know, float it by, because they might have some interesting ideas.
Excellent.
Do we have a cross-link between the village's website and the student page, so if somebody comes looking at the schools, they want to learn more about the village?
Yeah,
how's
we
that?
did, yeah. We did on our old site too, you couldn't, I don't know if you could. What?
You can find it.
If you can find it. Right.
Yeah, yeah, but we do. I'm in touch with Tyler about that, the assistant village manager.
I thought the video explaining to parents how to register for summer school was really helpful, so thank you for that. Good job. I'm wondering if you guys thought about doing any sort of little, here, check out our new website video for people, especially when it's launched.
That would be a good idea.
To walk people through like the major changes.
I'm sure Mickey could get some kids to do that, make a video like that, right?
Could do that.
Great
So
idea.
that someone doesn't get to the site and go, oh my god, what's this? It might be helpful. Yeah. Bit inactive.
Great.
That's a really good idea.
Yes.
Looks great.
I
And-
just want to share some an anecdote that there's a wonderful video that we have on our current website that I met a new family that moved to Shore about a year ago from New York. I did had a great family. They compared communities. I share that because often people kind of bandy about that, you know, people are going
look forward to, well, I'll be in touch. We will
Yes.
be getting content ready for you as well. Good. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, up next, so at the last board meeting, Brian and other administrators presented on district security. And so we asked him to come back to this meeting with updates based on his conversation with the chief and getting us some information about improvements to the PA and cameras.
Yes, so I had conversations with the chief. We're in the process of doing those walkthroughs. He was going to, and I just haven't received it yet, just give us kind of a summary of anything that was just outstanding that they had found, and things that would be like, these would be hotspots. So I don't have that summary though, but I do know that they've either had those walkthroughs at some buildings or are scheduled those. So that is in progress. Two of the things that I wanted to bring back as far as potentially being in our upcoming budget for 18-19 would be looking at security camera upgrades and PA systems. I think we heard from the principals and some staff just some concerns around what we currently have. So I posted a document that is a kind of a outline of what our security camera immediate needs could be. So this does not scale us up to the point where we'd be kind of a comprehensive fix, if you will. One of the main issues that we have right now is recording video, which is really important when you're thinking about like a security camera, not just to be able to see it. How many times you're going to see the crime like live, but to be able to go back and record it. So, so at 3 of our buildings, we do not have the capacity to do that, and so that's essentially where our investment would go into short term, is being able to get, and we've got specific areas kind of outlined for Atwater and Lake Bluff and the intermediate school. But the probably biggest upgrade is just making sure that there's recording capacity at each one of those buildings. So that's an infrastructure that, as we would look at a potential comprehensive look and extending more cameras and space into our buildings, any renovations that we would do, we'd be able to build off of these improvements. So we just want to make sure we're not doing it next year and then in 2 years we've got to go back and put a new system in. So we would deliberately kind of build the system, but it's certainly past time for us to be able to get up to speed. The high school's in better shape than the other 3, not great shape. So you know, we have some cameras that we need to replace at relatively small costs. So we would look at just kind of an incremental step, if you will. But this will get us to a better place for this coming year. So that's an impact statement that I'll put as part of our proposal as part of the budget in June, as we would bring it forward along with some other needs moving forward to have a step in the security camera area. So the other area that we were looking at was PA systems, and so that is a much more extensive cost if we were to look at kind of replacing or upgrading systems, just much more extensive. And so what Mickey and I and Pat have talked about is just being able to cover some of our dead spots. You know, we heard from some staff that we had bathrooms or hallways outside areas, and so the plan is to be able to just get an analysis of those areas, and then with pulling some wires in a $150 speaker or whatever the speaker would be, that we'd be able to cover that area for the short term, not make a huge investment, maybe a couple $1,000 to be able to just make sure that these dead spots and across our district are covered for the short term. And then as we would look at doing some larger renovation projects, that would be the time where we would go and do kind of an overhaul of some of our old PA systems, just because of the extensiveness that you really need to go through to dig those out of walls and pull wires, and it's just pretty comprehensive and very costly. Depending, certainly there's a range, but they can be up to $600,000 for us district-wide to be able to look at something like that. So quite extensive. Not anything that we would look at for the immediate future or for our immediate needs, but we do want to make sure that we're addressing our current needs right now. So so that's something that that both the covering the dead spots with speakers to be able to pull wires, and then some of these security cameras. I think we can have that be the upgrades that we could make for the 18-19 school year as we would get started, and then look at anything else that would be an extension of the security cameras, or gutting and revamping the full PA system without sticking too much money into that as part of larger potential renovations.
Is there a modern wireless version of PA systems in the world now? I mean, is that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll look at all kinds of options. I mean, a lot of that probably depends on the infrastructure of the building, just because of wireless coverage, and how well does it go through, depending on a lot of different factors. So we'll certainly do if we get to that point, certainly do a competitive bid process and look at a lot of different options. How well that can sink in with maybe your AV systems that we're looking at as part of our technology improvements for our classrooms, right? So if that speaker can not only be used for the PA, but it could be used for multimedia uses. I think there's a lot of things now technology-wise that we can do that in 1935 it just wasn't really possible. So we're but I guess I wanted to just communicate that we can make some progress on these things, that we're not just waiting for some bigger projects to happen, and being conscious of the dollar amount that we would spend short term.
So the numbers that you have here for each of the schools, those are based on, you say the price assumes all work is contracted out. So we already have a vendor for these?
So that's it's just an approximation.
It's an estimate?
Yeah, it's an estimate from that. So
based
that's
on
kind of ballpark from past experience
Okay.
that we've had, probably more so at the high school, as that's our most modern building.
And then, I guess, should we put it back on the April meeting that you will come back with the report from the chief?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely be able to have something by that point. They just weren't able to finish that up. So.
Anything else? No? All right. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the action agenda items. So the last meeting, Patrick Miller presented on Operational Expectation 6, Financial Administration, and we made some recommendations for improvements. So I will take a motion.
Make a motion for approval of the 2018-2019 improvements for Operational Expectation 6, Financial Administration.
All right. Patrick, can you give us the short rundown?
Sure. As I said, when I presented OE6, the purpose of my recommendation isn't to reduce the transparency, it's to reduce the amount of paperwork that is required when doing our price shopping. This is a regular occurrence in the business office. We price shop things at all different price points, not just between 5,000 and 20,000. So, but the amount of work that goes into price shopping things is time consuming, and then to print, scan, or save and make attachments. Sometimes we get these purchases like this from other sites, so having to go back to the sites and have secretaries sort of recreate their searches if they forget to do those particular things. It just allows us to continue to do the work without the burden of having to create and generate a lot of paperwork. Again, as I also said last month, I believe it was, this is not a deal breaker for us by no stretch of the imagination. I'm just looking to take some pressure off the people that are working in my office, and actually there's only one person who takes care of this, and she takes care of it for the entire district, as well as the recreation department. So my recommendation would be to change the low level threshold from $5,000 to $10,000.
that make sense?
Patrick, does that make sense to you?
I'm just trying to, I think I know what you're saying, I'm just not quite sure where I would make a change.
The price shop and the document, and comply with
Okay.
a heightened level of documentation, whatever that is described procedurally within their stuff. Because what you're saying is that you do this process regardless. The difference is, at this threshold, you don't maintain extensive documentation. At this threshold, you do.
Okay.
The implication here when I read this is that below 10,000,
We're not gonna price shop.
So we just need to articulate
what you
Okay.
said, yeah.
So we
No,
say that-
okay,
so
I
we
understand
change
that.
the indicator.
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
No, and that makes sense.
So subject to matching,
Any further discussion? Agree with Joanne's amendment?
Yeah, no, that was,
I'm-
you had made that very clear at
Right.
our last.
Mhm.
And in the purpose, but it's just not clear in the way it's written, so.
Yep, nope,
Okay.
I agree with you now.
okay, thank you.
So,
You need to propose an amendment.
All right, so I propose that we amend the amendment of OE 6 so that the language in Board Indicator 1 clarifies that price shopping is done at all levels and that the documentation requirements are demarcated at 5,000 and below, or excuse me, 10,000 and below is one process, 10 to 20 is another, and above 20 is competitive bid. So you basically have three standards. So
I'll second
damn long
that was
amendment.
quite the amendment,
Yeah,
okay.
I'll second it.
All
I
right.
think we gotta vote on the amendment, and we gotta vote on the actual.
Okay.
All right, so any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Amendment carries, motion carries. And then I have to vote on the original motion? All right, and then I will,
Yeah, we vote on the original motion
with the amendment.
With the
With the
amendment.
Okay, and then I will take a vote on the original motion with the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
And now Tim Joint gets to sit with us for a while. So at the last meeting, Tim also presented the,
Draft B.
Draft B version of the 2018-2019 school calendar. We now have a board book, Draft C.
Correct.
I will take a motion.
Yep. So, the three things that we looked at were, moving the graduation date to the following week, which added, an additional 5 student contact days that we could take off. Essentially, what those changes look like, if you're actually looking at the calendar, we had 6 blue professional development days in August. So we had 2 in the week of the 20th, and then 4 in the week of the 27th. So we moved one of those blue days down to the week of August 27th. And we moved the other blue day into February 18th, which is President's Day. We had that day as well this year. And then we added a day, January 2nd, winter break. And again, what we tried to do was add some, to make longer weekends, so, or extend breaks. So January 2nd, April 22nd completes a 4-day weekend, and May 24th completes a 4-day weekend. That 24th we would then use as a secondary winter storm, snow day, cold day if necessary. So if we had 2, then we'd pull back on that May 24th date. And then the last day, honestly, just kind of didn't fit really anywhere, so we pulled the actual last day of school back a day to June 12th, seeing as graduation is on the 9th.
13th and 6 days of teacher work day.
That Thursday would then be the teacher.
Summer school would start on the 2nd.
No, summer school would then start on the 24th. Yep, we would, so our teachers still need time to, 1, close down, and for our summer school teachers, prepare, right? And so to turn that around in 2 days and say, let's get started on Monday is gonna be too hard. So what we would do is, start the 24th, week 1, half a week, July 1st, 8th full week, 15th full week, 22nd full week, so we'd do 4.5 instead of 5, so we would lose a day because we have Fridays off. Yep, okay, sorry. And then also looking at the Wednesday early releases, could we potentially get SIS out a little bit earlier than the elementary schools so that our SIS kids could go to the elementary schools? In order to do that, really the only feasible way to do that was to add 10 minutes to the elementary Wednesday early release schedule. So that added some additional workload to our elementary teachers. So what we were actually able to do in terms of consistency was then offer our elementary school teachers half days, the same half days as our SIS counterparts. So those teal days are not SIS half day only, it's SIS and elementary half days. They would both get out at noon. So SIS would get out at 2:20, elementaries would get out at 2:25. And then the last one was to pull some data on some of our holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, pulling the last 2 years. Now, one of those fell on a Saturday, so there wasn't good data. So, I mean, we looked at the Friday before, but we were less than 2% of our enrollment was calling in with the excuse of religious holiday on those dates. Yep. Yes. Sunday. Yes. Yep. So to be honest, so the third and fourth. So what I did is I added 2 other days as opposed to the third and the fourth, because if we don't add those other, so one of the biggest concerns from the committee was the 6 days of professional development before school started, because it meant heavy front loading, and then there's no opportunities for professional development or teacher work time throughout the rest of the year. So it's 6 days and then kind of here you go. So one of the calendar committee's concerns was, can we put some of those down into the year so that we can have a pause and do some professional learning together? So I took that as an opportunity to move that PD down. If we were to look at those 2 days, we would probably have to pull April 22nd and May 24th, which then we're going to go back to, we have 1 snow day. We've had 1 snow day the past 2 years. Yep. So again, yep. What I did was bring back what I felt was my best suggestion and sent it out to the calendar committee as well. And the feedback I got was some of the changes and the elementary half days. So many of those members are part of the SEA. Yes. Okay, so pretty much straightforward. It's a renewal of the agreement that we have with Milwaukee Public Schools to continue to offer Chapter 220 program where we're able to offer the Chapter 220 program. So in this case, it's going to be for 52 students, I believe. 52 students. And that last class, since our legislation changed next year, it's this year's 5th graders will be next year's 6th graders.
So there hasn't been a lot of support when I've used this out a little bit with SWSA leadership. I think it might be a good work session with somebody like David Bowen, potentially. I know they've had some proposals, some legislation, so I think that might be a good work session just to talk through, just so you can also just give some perspective as representing beyond Charlotte. I think David would be a really good resource.
So any other further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. And last is approval of early college credit program. So I will take a motion. All right, Tim?
So this has fundamentally changed this winter from youth options to what is now called the Early College Credit Program. What has also changed is course options to what is called part-time open enrollment. And so these are really important changes because it is going to affect how we're going to approve and deny ECCP going forward, and so it will actually probably increase the number of denials that we make. Now, with that said, what's really important to note is, while this came out, many of these changes came out late November, early December, really the guidelines behind it from DPI and some of the questions really weren't fully fleshed out. So myself and our counselors don't feel like we did a good enough job being able to communicate to families because we didn't have the answers either. So we actually are suggesting that we approve the ECCP applications tonight under the old youth options legislation because we didn't have an opportunity to really communicate with parents what that sort of effect would be. So yeah, so to change it midstream seems negative. So if we could really get a chance to understand this better, and we feel like we have a pretty good grip on it now, so we feel like we can communicate this in the fall over the summer and through the fall semester to prepare for spring semester. But really, as you look through that presentation, and if I can walk you through that so that you can see some of the red line changes, I did provide some hyperlinks to actually look at the ECCP and the part-time open enrollment. Essentially, youth options becomes ECCP, course options becomes part-time open enrollment. Youth options was for 11th and 12th graders wanting to access higher education. Course options came in after youth options and was legislation that allowed any student at any grade level to access any Wisconsin education, whether that be another district, whether that be a higher education. It was a little bit more loosey-goosey than youth options really was. That's the actual description. It was K-12. So that has changed, and I want to walk you through some of those changes. So starting with what has changed for youth options as it changed to early college credit program. Instead of being for just 11th and 12th graders, it is now open to 9th through 12th graders looking to get into higher education and just higher education alone. So it no longer allows students to go to technical college. So hold on that one, all right? And I'll come back to technical college, but early college credit program does not allow students to go into a technical college. There's a separate program for that. Start College Now is that program. Here's the key piece. If you are in Start College Now, you may not be in early college credit program. If you are in early college credit program, you may not be in Start College Now. You are picking a track, which is a problem for a lot of districts that are partnering with technical colleges and training kids in areas, for instance, like educator preparedness. So they need to flush that out. Luckily, Shorewood is not at this time in too much of hot water there. There are some other districts that are really trying to figure out how to navigate that. I think ultimately what ended up happening was they're trying to compartmentalize. Higher education is going to be the early college credit program. Part-time open enrollment is for if you're going to a different district. Rather than youth options, which was just for 11th and 12th graders and was just higher education, and course options, which was kind of whatever you want to do. So I think they're trying to add a little bit more structure to it and categorize it a little bit more. Correct. Yep, so let me get down into that, okay? So what still remains the same is that you can gain a total of 18 credits from a higher education. So where it starts to change is where you get down to the notification of the school board. So we technically do not need to notify the student of a school board's approval or denial until a week before the course begins. We're not following that. We're going to continue to try to get out as early as we possibly can. But what is important to note is that UW-Milwaukee actually had to send approvals for youth options within a similar time frame. So they were actually holding spots for high school students before they were holding spots for their own students. That's now changed. So now UW-Milwaukee is going to fill their courses with their own students first and then fill in with early college credit program students. Correct. Availability of courses becomes a bigger issue for our students. Okay? The denial reasons for us was comparable course is offered, and that's really what we followed. The key piece that's really changed is that ECCP is not a graduation requirement according to state law, not according to our board policies. And that's an important thing to look at, okay? So if we deny, and we're going to deny a lot based off of that graduation policy, it does not mean that the student cannot take the course. It means that the funding of the course changes, okay? So if we approve, we're going to pay for 75% of the course, the state will pay for 25%. If a student is denied, we'll pay 25%, the state will pay 50%, and the pupil will pay 25%. That's in line with what course options was for students. So if a student took a course through UW-Milwaukee through course options, they were paying 25% as well, okay? Correct. It is the state graduation requirement. So if you look at the next slide down, it details what those graduation requirements are. So that's 8 English credits, 6 social studies credits, 6 math credits, 6 science credits, 3 physical education credits, and 1 health credit. There's a key piece to this. Underneath those it says the state superintendent shall encourage, and I bolded encourage, school boards to require an additional 8.5 credits selected from any combination of vocational education, foreign language, fine arts, and other courses. Note, encourage does not mean required. Okay, so here's where this gets really interesting, is that what does that actually mean? So we would, first off, continue to deny if we have similar curriculum. Okay, so first and foremost, that stays the same. We're still going to deny if we offer a similar course. We have to deny if it does not meet the graduation credit requirement in state statute 118.33. In other words, if a student wants to take Japanese, that is not a graduation requirement according to state statute 118.33. We would deny any foreign language ECCP requests. It does not mean that the student cannot take the course. The student may still take the course, just the funding of it changes. So we would deny foreign language, we would deny math credits over 3 years, we would deny science credits over 3 years, we would, correct. Many of our students are in that category, so we're gonna have to start running credit checks on this. So that's the really big fundamental difference between youth options and ECCP. Again, with youth options, when we denied, that meant you were not allowed to take the course, and we wouldn't, like, there was no help in there whatsoever. So now we can deny, but it doesn't mean you can't take the course, the fund. I'd have to take a look. Right. So now keep in mind, and the third point to remember is denial doesn't mean that the student can't take the course. It means that the funding does change, but there is some funding for free and reduced lunch students. So if there is a free and reduced lunch application, we would still help that student out.
But it says also you don't get high school credit.
Correct. You also don't get so we would where we would what we would encourage students to do is send both transcripts, which we do already, which is say you should really send your UW Milwaukee transcript along with our transcript, so that colleges are getting both transcripts, which our counselors are saying they're telling students to do no matter what. If they're doing youth options now, they're already asking them, go get the official transcript and send it alongside. We have leverage in tweaking our own graduation requirements, which is what we have done. We can't change the state mandate, the minimum, correct? Which we don't currently have. That wouldn't change. So again, how ECCP is written right now is that it's based off of the state statute's requirements, not our statute, not our policies. So even though we have different policies, it wouldn't align. So we would deny many of the elective requests as well. Again, not that a student can't take it, but the funding changes. We absolutely are. Yeah, the Start College now is how you get to the technical college. It's still being ironed out what that's actually going to look like, but essentially it's looking like, yeah, it's going to be a large majority of it based on cost. Late November. Okay. part-time open enrollment is the new course options. Again, course options being open to any and all students. Part-time open enrollment now limits that to 9th through 12th graders. And essentially what you can consider part-time open enrollment is I'm going to another school district for part-time. Okay, so I'm going to go to Nicolet for XYZ. I'm going to go to Whitefish Bay for XYZ. You're going to go to another Wisconsin school on a part-time basis. Course options, probably equal to about youth options is the easy answer. And so you can do up to 2 courses, and then the resident district covers the full cost of this based on a calculation from DPI that has not yet been determined, so we don't know how much that's going to be. And the application would still be 6 weeks in advance before the course. You have to obtain approval from me, as it was in the past. And the only reason we're going to be able to deny is based off of a financial burden that it may place on us, or it conflicts with an IEP or a late application. I'm a stickler on deadlines on both of these, just so you know, because ultimately there's a lot of money that's going into both of these programs, so I'm pretty on with those deadlines. We do have to notify the student if it doesn't align with graduation requirements. I don't know why, but we have to let the student know it's not a graduation requirement. So they could go to another school and take Japanese. I would let them know that that doesn't comply with the graduation requirement. Yep. So I can't deny it, I just have to let them know that it's not a graduation requirement. No, to be honest. I mean, there would be a few pockets of that here and there. Many others were taking advantage of our distance learning policy that we have. So that's what that is. And so the rest of it is pretty similar. So again, kind of what would change from past practice? So if you're using course options to go to UW-Milwaukee, you now need to use ECCP to go to UW-Milwaukee. We're not using part-time open enrollment. We would have students going to take Hebrew at Nicolet. That's allowed. I would notify them that it's not a graduation requirement. We have a lot of course options work with eAchieve that will continue. They just need to be letting us know 6 weeks in advance, and not once school starts, now I'd like to go do this part-time open enrollment. We need to be 6 weeks in advance so that we can plan accordingly. For this particular semester, the only thing I went through on this one and said, do we offer similar curriculum, period, end of story. And that was, again, based off of old youth options. That's what we utilized, was just did we offer a similar. And this is for the, so technically this goes in place for fall of 2018. Correct, and that was true before, right? So even with youth options, there was students requesting 6, 8, 9 different courses, when in reality they were probably going to get into 1, maybe 2. So again, we are approving them, and then they need to go through the rest of the process in order to figure out if that will actually work with their schedule, what's going to be available. Yes. So ECCP we are required to approve, just like the youth options. So, yep, so this is, so what I'm doing is notifying you of the changes in legislation first and foremost. This is what's going to happen going forward. And then I'm going back and saying, so with the applications that we have for the fall semester, right, correct. And so, yeah, I'd have to look through. There was one that was a multi-pager. So I think it was right around that number, correct? No, there's some that are yeses and there are some that are denials. So within there, what you'll notice is I've either correct. So as I was going through with counselors on it, I actually went through and said, so this is going to be an approval. So anything, I mean, honestly, the one that's most shocking is, okay, Japanese. So we don't offer this. So for this semester, it's a no, we don't have comparable course offerings. Keep in mind, everyone, the conversation needs to happen for next semester that this is going to be a denial. That doesn't mean that the kid can't take, and that's like, so I'm always following that up with, that doesn't mean the kid can't take the course. It means, yep, and Megan Anchor will do that. She's really good at making sure that when there's a denial or those sorts of pieces, that would be a no.
So we are proving, like we've always approved these kind of kids' grants, because we're doing that because they absolutely
Correct. So essentially, correct. So what I'm saying is, essentially, we're taking on, to be honest with you, we're taking on a larger financial burden that I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback on, because if we would have gone through and done it according to what I just presented, we would be putting a larger financial burden on the state. We're taking on a larger financial burden by approving many of these. Correct.
So if we table that and get council advice, then we need to come
Back in April, which would be okay according to the new stipulations. We technically don't have to get back to the student until August 20
That's what I
something.
meant.